Have you ever kind of thought, how do I get this confidence that women always talk about, right? Like you hear it all the time. Women saying, I want a confident guy. And what really is confidence? And then also, like, how does confidence tie into self-esteem? And I never really knew the difference, even though my company is called Inner Confidence. And that was something I always sought to build in myself and help my clients build. But it wasn't until recently when I had a conversation with Geoff, who is our guest today. Welcome to the show, Geoff. Where he actually helped me uncouple those two things. And Geoff is a therapist and psychologist who's also had a very interesting, well-rounded life, living down in Brazil, originally from the UK, I believe. And he's been working with a number of my clients in the community, and they're all raving about how much he's helped them build their self-esteem, help them feel good about themselves, so the confidence that they're building in the program actually matches up. And I think it's one of the big pieces that most people in the dating space have never really talked about. So super excited to learn more and have this conversation. I know we talked about a week or two ago and got to know each other a little bit, but for the rest of the listeners, can you tell your story and how you became a therapist and started helping men, and just your whole journey, because I know it's fascinating.
You're listening to the Inner Confidence Podcast. My name is Robbie Kramer. I've been a coach since 2007, and I've helped countless men rapidly achieve all of their social and dating goals. My mission is simple: to help you position yourself to meet stunning women, make awesome friends, en route to becoming the most confident and attractive version you can possibly be. I'm absolutely obsessed with giving you the most leveraged ways possible to win the game, so stick around, let's go.
I've always been interested in helping people from a very young age. People would always tell me stories, and I was always interested. I worked in the film industry and I saw many people struggling. It's one of those jobs that you're working 12, 14-hour days. And we was on the model unit, so the computer graphics and stuff. So I kind of remember thinking when we got disbanded, I was working on Harry Potter. We were coming up to the last book, which was 2 films, if I remember rightly. And everyone was going off to different places in the film industry, and I thought, I'm going to go off and study to be a psychotherapist. I want to change, and off I went and got a couple of diplomas, worked for a few agencies in London, and then got an offer to come to Brazil and set up private practice here. And that's where I've met your clients and my clients. Yeah, here I am, sort of working away with all different types of people from different backgrounds. I'm a child therapist. I worked for 5 years with children, and I'm a family therapist as well. So I specialized in addiction as well, which has helped me see things quite differently. Why do people have habits, traits, addictions, dependency, and that kind of thing? So I've kind of really across the board, and it's allowed me to see the inner workings of us very differently than many. And I looked at coaching, actually. I was really into the idea of being a coach. And I remember thinking, it's like the confidence outer workings of coaching, or it's the inner workings of therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And I chose therapy. It was on a knife edge. I like both, but here I am. Psychotherapist, studying counseling, got a couple of diplomas, one in integrative therapy and the other in person-centered therapy.
Yeah, I was mentioning to you before, I've had a couple therapy sessions. I was seeing a therapist for a time when I was living in Ukraine for some addiction stuff. And I thought your take was really interesting on addiction and promiscuity. And I wanted to ask you about that. For myself anyways, when I was in my, I think it was, probably right around high school, university, I had this desire to be extremely promiscuous. And I didn't know if that was just me being a young guy, or something else. And I noticed some people really had that, other people didn't. I feel like the guys who are drawn to my work have this desire on some regards as well, but they can't fulfill the desire, which leads them to the dating coaching space, I guess you could say. But I never realized there was even a link. I didn't really ever think about it until you mentioned that when we talked the other day. So I wanted to pick your brain on that part.
I think sex addiction is interesting, isn't it? Because if it's not porn addiction, it's actual meeting people and getting hooked on sex. It's a hard one to untangle because sex is natural. It's something that we do very naturally and we get involved in. If you're taking too much alcohol or drugs, you know that's not natural. So that's kind of quite easy to define. But sex is different, isn't it? So how do you know if and when you've got a sex addiction?
Right.
And what is it? Because it's a very natural phenomenon. So I think it varies from the rest. When does it become a problem? I think when the client knows that there's something wrong. But if you think, what is addiction? It's many things, but I think at its grassroots, it's a mechanism to cope with life. But within that, it's often a mechanism to avoid what it is that we don't want to cope with. So Gabor Mate is probably one of the greats in the world at the moment. It's a symptom of the problem. So that's where we come back to self-esteem and confidence. If you think of confidence as a skill set, which I guess you're giving your clients on a regular basis and building that up. But if some of them have got a propensity towards addiction or habit forming or dependency, what is that about? And that is the stuff that keeps self-esteem and self-belief and self-worth down.
So, like, let's say you've got a guy who, he's building his skills with dating, his conversation skills. He learns to approach women and starts doing okay, but he still has maybe like a porn addiction or something like that. But how does that impact his self-esteem? It basically, like, my very probably juvenile understanding would be when he succumbs to the addiction, it lowers his self-esteem, it kills his desire, that sort of thing.
It can be. It can be many things, but I think if we look at it at its general base, normally an avoidance of self. If I get caught up in having sex all the time, why am I doing it?
Mm-hmm.
What is it that's lacking in my life? And the two great Carls is Carl Rogers and Carl Jung. And I think they believe that basically at the core of the human being, we're pretty similar. So if you're doing something that's building you, it's possibly taking something away from you. And then the neuroscience behind it is quite interesting because there's a doctor from America called Dr. Lemke who wrote a book called Dopamine Nation. And it's about we're all hooked on dopamine. And any substance that we take, sex included, gambling, hits the dopamine button. And then what happens is that we don't get the serotonin. And serotonin is the delayed gratification. And that's the stuff that I believe builds up self-esteem. So if we're constantly hitting the dopamine button, it's reducing self-esteem. So we need to get towards the delayed gratification, building ourselves up. For instance, if you're a bit overweight, you go to the gym, you train for 3 months, you see a bit of a six-pack, that builds self-esteem. I start to feel a bit better about myself inwardly. So there's an example. That's just a small example. So it is, one takes away from you, the other gives you something.
I see.
If you keep taking away from you, you're going to have a deficit. And if you build up your confidence and you've got lower self-esteem and you've got what I call a meta baseline, your baseline is going to be sloping. You need to bring up your self-esteem with your confidence. It doesn't mean we don't ride up and down from that baseline.
Right.
Because we're emotional human beings. But when we're up and they're both pretty much level and the baseline's level, we're firing pretty well. We don't need to avoid. We're doing the work, if you like. And we're doing stuff that feels good. And we're pretty much similar on that.
How does therapy really tackle that?
Good question, Robbie. I think the way that I work generally, if I'm doing an assessment with someone, I tell them, well, what I get them to do is to raise their self-awareness so that I call it the no BS approach.
Okay.
I will ask you questions after questions to get you to look at yourself inwardly under a microscope. It can drive you a little bit mad for a while, but what you do is you learn so much about yourself. That once you realize what you're doing that isn't helping you, then you've got a choice.
Mm-hmm.
When you've got a choice, then you've got a choice between serotonin and dopamine, for instance. One's going to raise you, one's going to deplete you if you do too much of one or the other. Nothing wrong with either in the right proportion. That's how you get somebody to start to realize what I'm doing is not helping. But this, if I do that and slowly begin to do that, that will help me. And that's the way I work. That's a
Yeah.
bit of a summary. But
That's interesting. So it gives you the awareness. So each time you're at that decision point, fork in the road, you're like, I could do the addictive behavior that will release the dopamine, make me feel good now, but then I'll feel like crap after. Or I can do
it's short-lived. Yeah.
right. Or I could do the hard work that's I don't really want to do, but I know if I do it, I'm going to feel great down the road. So you're just kind of shining a light on that fork in the road more often, it sounds, because I think a lot of people just default to the addictive behavior. They don't even realize they're probably doing it.
Well, you think about the conscious mind is about, 5%? If you're really clever, maybe 6 or 7, but say 5% of the conscious mind. So there's 95% of the mind working away. And the 5% can't possibly see what's going on. So unless you start to look.
Mm-hmm.
And Freud said about the pyramid, the iceberg. And the tip of the iceberg is the conscious, about 5%. Well, you've got the ability to see the mid-mind, but the choppy waters, which might be some trauma, some emotional stuff, you need to calm that to be able to see what's under the water. And that's the work, is talking about the stuff that's causing the froth and getting some clarity. Once you get that, you start to make the subconscious conscious. And that's the questioning, that's the interest. If you think about it, what are the 4 things we do that stop us seeing? Repression, suppression, denial, and rationalization.
Mm-hmm.
They are all avoidances of this part of the mind. So if I start to say, get curious, get interested, look inside of yourself, now you're turning that around. Now we start to have the possible ability to let stuff come up because of the interest and curiosity.
Interesting. Wow, it's crazy to think that there's 95% we're not even consciously aware of, right?
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? I mean, the mind's a very big place, and a lot of it's very deep, and some is very primal, and that has a bearing on addiction, I believe, the primal mind.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about it, if we were in a tribe way back, sapiens in the early days, there would have been a good reason to stick to a habit, to stick to a route,
Right.
to stay on the path and not to vary. There would have been very good reasons. And I believe personally that that's still very much in play. So when we get caught up in a system and it's gratifying with a lot of dopamine, there might be a primal part that's saying, stick to this, we know this. And the irony is that part doesn't know whether it's good or bad for us. It just knows that it's possibly safer for us. So it's possibly outdated, but still very strong and powerful.
Yeah, I don't remember where I heard this, but the idea was that the main function of, I guess, one of our brain, maybe the mammalian brain, they talked about the reptilian, the mammalian, the human. One of those is just primarily only interested in keeping us safe and keeping us away from danger. Just, do what you know, don't veer from that. That's dangerous, that's scary, and that can be a very confining sort of lifestyle if that's the brain that's talking the loudest.
That's the most dominant,
right?
And you throw a bit of chaos and trauma at an early age, and that the cortisol and adrenaline seems to trigger that. The amygdala, which is the fight or flight. And what is that? That's primal, isn't it? That's the fight flight stuff, the prehistoric stuff. So if you've got that going on, you can imagine where that sort of takes us. It takes us into the old brain, maybe the reptilian brain, the mammal brain, and then we're starting to get caught up in habit. I worked with in addiction for years, and when you point out to somebody, why do you continue to do something that's hurting you so badly? And they don't actually know why. And when we start to look at the addictive personality and unpack it and undo it as a separate entity, another facet of the mind or another part of the ego, whatever we want to call it, it's really quite surprising when people become aware. They don't actually know why they still do it, but they know if they stop, there's a fear. And yet the fear is neurotic. It's not rational. Mm-hmm. Because by changing the behavior, you're going to feel better. Why would you fear that? So it sounds like it's probably primal. It's probably old.
So when you say serotonin, my mind goes towards some performance-enhancing substances I used to dabble in, namely MDMA. And I found that when I took that, my social skills went to the moon, or I had already gotten to a place where, you know, my social skills, or my game, so to speak, right? My skills with dating and seduction were quite high before I ever dabbled in those sort of recreational drugs. I talked to a lot of clients about this, and a lot of friends who say kind of the opposite, that like when they've done MDMA, it just makes them kind of too lovey-dovey and too in their feelings, and, you know, unattractive. The reason I bring it up is because you mentioned serotonin. My understanding of how MDMA works is it kind of just releases it dumps serotonin. Also maybe similar to SSRIs, right? I guess some people call them happy pills, or I'm curious in terms of the science, what is the impact on the brain? What are the long-term sort of repercussions of that?
I'm not a neuroscientist, but I do study it. So excuse me if I get this wrong. But my basic understanding of it is people with addiction issues, apparently a lot of them have low serotonin anyway.
Okay.
And then what you've got is an overload of dopamine actually reduces serotonin as well. Neuroscience is kind of telling us that, and that kind of makes sense. The irony is that using too much serotonin doesn't affect dopamine at all. If you've got the propensity to addiction, or predisposition is a better word, I think, the chances are you've got low serotonin. You favor dopamine, you lower the serotonin. That's why a lot of people that have addictive personality like MDMA, Molly, or ecstasy or something, because it releases. The good news is there isn't a drug, as far as I'm aware, that can release something you don't have inside of you. You've got to learn to release it on your own. But also you've got to learn to move away from dopamine and improve your serotonin levels. I work with more recently, over the last 3 years, I'm working more with people that use SSRIs to actually help give them a springboard to tackle their addiction. And in my experience, it's working very well.
Okay.
So it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
But again, you know, ayahuasca is very common here. I haven't done it. I've used some LSD when I was young and stuff, so I kind of got an idea.
Right.
But again, it's got this ability to bypass blockages and go straight to places that we find it difficult to go to for whatever reason. We put defense mechanisms in the way, and they cause blockages. I think Molly and other drugs have the ability to bypass those and release them. And that's why people get these epiphanies and kind of sort of like light bulb moments and stuff like that.
Real quick, if you're a divorced guy trying to figure out modern dating, I put together something special for you. It's called the Social Funnel Method, and it's a 5-day free email course I made just for guys like you. Guys who want to date high-quality women and build a lifestyle that actually feels good again. You'll learn exactly what works today, not 10 years ago, and how to stand out in a world of dating apps, ghosting, and Instagram. Head over to innerconfidence.com/start to get step 1 sent straight to your inbox. It's totally free. Go do it now, and let's rebuild your dating life in the right way.
I've also dabbled with a decent amount of ketamine, and had some. It was interesting because it almost felt, if you do enough, like you're hallucinating, right? I think it has some hallucinogenic properties to it as well. And now ketamine therapy seems pretty popular, pretty out there. And I haven't tried ketamine therapy, but the people I know that have tried it, who've also tried recreational ketamine, they're like, oh my God, this is so much more powerful, you know, than the stuff we were snorting at Burning Man. And they're, you know, the results that they got from it, the awareness is on another level. I've also never tried ayahuasca, but, you know, dabbled in some of the recreational stuff as well, and LSD, that sort of thing. I always found it fascinating how much just sort of, you know, it's crazy how you're in one mental state and then you're just completely somewhere else, you know, and having radically different thoughts and feelings. I hate marijuana just for the reason it makes me incredibly antisocial. I just constantly think about what other people are thinking about me, and I get very hypervigilant and very negative, very paranoid.
There's a lot of people paranoid,
Yeah, very anxious. And then you've got other people who love it. It makes them feel at ease. So,
but if I guess that taps into a little bit of the attachment style. If you're an anxious attachment person, and again, you know, the drugs tap into us. If you're a secure a person from a secure base, pretty solid, lucky enough to be the 40% that had the upbringing that made you feel really secure in life, the chances are it's not going to tap into an anxious place because
Right.
the majority of you is pretty secure psychologically. So again, it's interesting. It tapped into me when I smoked it. It made me very anxious. But I
Mm.
used to be a very anxious person.
Interesting.
So again, the drugs tend to bring out what it is that's there. And I would suggest so does the psilocybins and the ayahuasca and these things. They tend to tap in. I mean, if you think about it, it's logical because not that long ago, hypnotherapy was a really strong way of bypassing blockages and
Right.
defenses. And it took a bad turn for some people and got a bit of a bad reputation. And when people started using it for fun and getting people to act like chickens and stuff, and it
The
kind
Las
of lost
Vegas
its
shows.
ability. Yeah,
Right.
it kind of lost its ability to be taken serious. But
Mm.
that was really what a lot of these drugs were doing, I believe. And I think drugs are doing it better today as well. It's probably another reason hypnotherapy has gone. But
Mm.
yeah, again, it's getting into the parts of the mind that we are restricting. And that's what, for me, therapy is opening up your mind without, I mean, I don't use drugs, I've got no problem with them,
Yeah.
but opening up your mind with interest and curiosity and figuring out what it is that you're not seeing that's possibly going to be helpful for you if you want to change and you want to build self-belief. And I think guys as well, we struggle with purpose.
Hmm.
Like a lot of guys in today's world as well, there's a lot of social media pressure and, you've got to look like this and, what is our purpose? And I think as well, that can be a real builder. If I find my purpose, then I can believe in myself and that can raise my self-esteem as well.
Right.
So it's kind of avoiding the need to chemically feel better and find ways of doing it naturally.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a great summary of it. So this might be a tough question to answer, but one I've grappled with quite a bit, and I feel like my clients have grappled with it too. What would you say, like a healthy amount of, I guess, promiscuity, learning to be better with women? Obviously there's, take a guy and he's in a place of scarcity. He's not getting dates or he's not getting dates with the women he wants. And then he starts developing a persona where he, is able to do that a bit better. And then some guys will be like, okay, I just want a girlfriend. I just want, a partner. And they go down that route. Other guys like myself, I kind of felt like, oh, wow, there's this superpower that I now possess. I can go out and, go on these crazy adventures and meet women from all over the world. And I kind of saw it as almost like a rite of passage. I was never in the military. And so this sort of lifestyle of being this playboy, I guess you could say, and living out sexual fantasies and adventure really called to me. And that was, I felt like that was the most interesting, most passionate, purposeful thing I could do almost. And I did make it somewhat of my purpose. And I think there's a lot of other guys my age, because the whole pickup scene, the book, The Game came out, around 2005. So, for a guy like me who was just finishing college, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I wanted to be a golfer. And then all of a sudden, like, I learned you could chase skirt and you could make money as a marketer doing, and you could effectively, I learned a way to fuel what some people might call an addiction, you could say. So I just wanted to kind of dump that out there and see if you had any thoughts. I know that's a big,
Again, I go back to the core values of a human being. Some religions talk about this, but I think Carl Rogers put it best. At the core of us, we're all pretty similar. So again, but we do differ, and that's the problem. But if we're at the core, we're all pretty similar. It's like, or the collective unconscious, like Carl Jung speaks about. If you want to go out and have sex with a lot of partners and you want to do it successfully and you want to do it without regret, I would suggest the way to do it is to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I think when the problems appear in my work is when people cheat themselves and others, or they
Mm-hmm.
trick themselves and others. And also, a way of trickery is alcohol or drugs. And we do things when we're under the influence of substances that we wouldn't do. So we're not being honest and congruent. We're actually going off and doing stuff that we wouldn't normally do. That seems to be the problem, or when the problem begins to arise. And that's what I would ask people to check in with themselves with. You know, if you're okay with it, you don't need to get drunk and do it, or learn what it is you're okay with before you go out and get drunk and do it, and learn what it is that fits for you, and then try and be honest and open with the other or others, whatever you're up to. That seems to come back as the game of least regrets, I would suggest.
Yeah.
And that seems to be not a bad rule of thumb, actually, I think.
I love that, because there was a time in my development where I didn't have the confidence or the ability to communicate, or I felt, I guess, too much fear to be honest about what I wanted. And the result of that was, going on lots of dates and running around New York City and picking up girls in the park and the subway and whatnot, and then signaling that I was interested in a relationship when really I just wanted sex and, fun and casual things. So I developed this little harem, a rotation of girls. And of course, I was hoping for the short term, and ultimately a lot of them wanted the long term. And then they were upset with me, of course, because I had signaled one thing and done another. But it was kind of coming out of that place of scarcity where I was getting nothing before that, and then being afraid, oh, well, if I tell her I'm not interested in anything long term, then she's not going to stick around. She's
a real fear for a young guy that's finding the way, the path, the game.
Right. And then I learned to be more upfront about it and have the conversations. And also, I always tell my clients, like, you can tell them, but showing is way more powerful. Being congruent with your actions. You can tell a woman, hey, listen, I'm not looking for anything serious, but if you're texting her every day and you're seeing her every other day because it feels good and you're comfortable and she wants to see you, and then she asks you, a couple months down the road, hey, like, what's going on? What are we? And you're like, oh, I told you a few months ago, we're casual. She's not going to be happy about that, right? I
think you've used a great word that Roger's used as well, congruent. I think congruence is, but again, I don't want to be tough on the people that don't see the congruence, because not all of us see. And a lot of people that get caught up in addiction, Robbie, as well, you might know this from what you've just told me. A lot of people that there's traits in addiction that I've seen. A lot of addicts, if not all of them that I've met, are sensitive, very sensitive. And what that tends to do is the addictive personality people, dependent people, tend to get hurt a little bit more than the rest of the population. I've noticed that in my work over many years.
Yeah.
So you've got that going on. So you've got somebody who wants to please others, and then you've got somebody that then we start saying, be congruent. Well, somebody that wants to please and is sensitive and felt it hard growing up because of those predispositions is going to struggle to be open and honest, even if they know that that's what they're doing, because it doesn't make a person bad. You don't know till you know. That's why I like therapy.
Yeah.
Because it allows me to help somebody see themselves and to let that part of them up, and then they can be congruent.
Right.
Until then, you don't know till you know, right?
Yeah, that's so insightful. And I've seen that with almost all of my clients. They're all very similar to me in the sense of recovering nice guy syndrome and people pleasing. And there's this massive desire to make other people like you, to not rock the boat. Like, I find myself to be incredibly sensitive. If someone's upset with me for any reason, like it drives me crazy. It's very hard to sit with that. So the idea at first of, telling a girl that I liked that, some bad news, whatever it was, like, I would avoid that like the plague, right? I found it easier to even...
Because we get hurt.
Yeah.
Deeply hurt. We think everybody else is the same. And we're probably, 10% of the population or something. I don't know what the research is, but it's something like that, I would suggest.
Mm-hmm.
So we're projecting onto others that I don't want to say anything to displease somebody because I know it hurts me.
Right. Do you have any other thoughts on just that nice guy syndrome, how that impacts guys and their development? And is there any correlation between let's say, nice guy syndrome with, anxious attachment or attachment styles in general, or those. I know you said the addictive personalities are more likely to be that.
They're more likely to be anxious and avoidant, or anxious avoidant, generally speaking. I think people pleasing, normally, generally speaking, comes from parent pleasing, one or the other or both. And there is, like I say, if you've got a predisposition to oversensitivity, and your parents might not be doing anything wrong, but if you're not feeling it, then you start to please them. That's normally working with kids where this starts to happen.
If you're not feeling what? Exactly.
If you're not feeling the security, which creates the secure base.
Right.
The security creates a secure base. The insecurity creates anxious or avoidant attachment styles.
Gotcha.
It doesn't mean it's not there. It just means you're not feeling it. Or if it isn't there, then obviously, on the scale of insecurity and avoidant and anxious attachment styles, they grow, they get bigger. You throw some chaos and trauma in there, some cortisol and adrenaline, you're going more up the ladder of how hard it becomes for people. And often that replicates the pleasing. The more the more everybody was okay and I wasn't, the more I want to please.
Right.
And then we get lost. We get lost within pleasing others. Think about it. If I'm constantly pleasing you, I'm not pleasing me. And therefore I get lost.
Yeah.
And so does the congruence.
Makes sense.
So that's the work, isn't it? And that depletes self-esteem and self-worth because I don't know myself.
Right. You're just trying to get that hit of dopamine from pleasing the person, I guess you could say.
Well, dopamine's great, isn't it? A bit of excitement and dopamine. If I'm feeling not very good and everybody else is better than me, I mean, that's very attractive, isn't it? And adrenaline as well is quite addictive.
One thing I see pretty often in a client's journey, myself included, is when you get to a place of more abundance and you become more attractive to women and you start dating women who are more attractive, there seems to be a very sort of direct correlation between the most attractive women and also some of the, more, I guess, antisocial behaviors, narcissism. I found I dated a few girls who were borderline personality disorder, and I found myself so much more attracted to those women for whatever reason. I'm curious if you've come across some of this stuff in your work.
What is it you think that attracted you to them? I mean, I don't go into depth if you don't want to, but I think this is an interesting question. I think it's got a few variables, but if I can personalize it, what is it that you found, like you see a borderline or a narcissistic personality type?
I felt like they were more confident because they were harder to get, and there was more of a sense of overcoming something great to get with them, or it was more of an achievement versus a girl who was, a little bit easier, I guess you could say. Not necessarily to sleep with, I'm not just talking about sex. I'm talking more about getting them to really fall for you, right? Because they seem a little bit more guarded. They're very hot and cold, right? I think that's what it is. It's the hot and cold. Some days they're basically giving you all this love and admiration and appreciation, all these things. And the next day they're like, not that interested. And it's like an emotional roller coaster they're putting you on. And that's I feel like it's very addictive in a way.
Yeah, and that's the problem, isn't it? When you've got somebody that's anxious and avoidant or one or the other, and you've someone who's quite secure comes along, there's not much of a game in that. And a lot of the people that are one or the other or both of the anxious and avoidant types find that a little bit boring. And then you meet a narcissist or a borderline person, and it's like, wow, what a challenge. And this is exciting, isn't it?
Right.
And the irony is, and again, we're speaking a lot today generally, so there's always variations, but the people I work with narcissism and borderline are normally very vulnerable people. And the narcissism and the borderline personality conditions are ways of coping with life and what's often happened to them as well. So there's a certain amount of vulnerability. And what I found, generally speaking, again, is these people don't trust very well. So they hold back. And that's what could possibly be the challenge.
Yeah.
But it's not, I think narcissists and borderline people in today's world are getting a really bad rap.
Mm-hmm.
Often it's a structured defense against the world being an unsafe place. And then somebody comes along that sees it as a challenge, and they think it's a game, but often it's somebody hiding a real vulnerability underneath.
Interesting.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, there's so many, YouTube channels and it's very seductive, right, to start labeling people as personality disorders and whatnot, or to say, oh, my ex, she's a narcissist, or she's this, she's that. I found it fascinating, though, that one of the women in particular who I was the most sort of, in the dating space, they call it Oneitis. Have you heard of that term before? It's like itis for the one, where you get so fixated on getting this girl back or making it work, even though she's probably not that interested. Maybe she's rejected you completely or ghosted you or whatever, but you just can't. I see this so often with clients. They're hung up on these girls for years sometimes, right? And it's always the ones who rejected them. Even though they were rejected, it's like the girl might text them once every 4 or 5 months, giving them a glimmer of hope. And then, they ask them on a date and it's, no thanks, or I'm busy, or, whatever. But very seductive to then label these women as, oh, well, she's just a narcissist bitch, or she's this or that or whatever. But one of the girls in particular, she told me on the, second time we met, she's like, yeah, I have borderline personality disorder. I'm diagnosed. And I was like, ooh, this will be fun.
Some people are very straight, very honest, and
Yeah.
they know themselves. And then you can work on yourself, of course.
Right.
The hardest thing to do is to work with somebody with borderline or narcissism is if they don't know that they are that. I used to work in rehab, and you could see it quite plainly after a while. And they don't know it, but you know it. If you want a bloody nose, you go and say, I think you're a borderline.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody's ready to hear it, you've got it. And actually that's not a bad place to be.
Mm.
But if they don't know, then you're working from a different set of rules, I guess.
Yeah, when I first heard about, these terms, or what are they called in the DSM? Never mind. But or antisocial personality disorders, I guess. Yeah.
Well, answer to
Cluster
your question,
B, I think I was looking for. Mm-hmm.
Cluster B.
Yeah.
Answer to your question, I think I avoided that a little bit, but just going back, Robbie, to your question, why is it that some people won't let go of the other? Mm. I think there's obviously variations to that again, so I'll generalize. But if you are attached to somebody that you don't know, the chances are you haven't let go of something else or somebody else. There's a chance that exists. And if you do know them and you don't want to let them go, the chances are you're avoiding saying goodbye, which releases the Kubler-Ross. It's the grieving process. People don't like the grieving process. It's bloody painful.
Yeah.
It makes you angry. It shocks you. It makes you sad. All sorts of stuff. So people won't let go not because of the other necessarily, although that would be part of it, but it will be because of the emotional content that's going to come up when you say goodbye.
Yeah, I found that the desire from my clients when they're dealing with this oneitis, you could say, is they always want closure. And they waffle between wanting to text these women something mean, like, you never cared about me anyways, you're a piece of shit. They want to, lash out and make the other person feel some pain around how much pain they felt, I guess, or being hurt. But then the second they do that, they regret it. And, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, because now they're like, oh, now she's really gone. Or they want to send a text that they think will give them closure. And my coaching is always like, the best thing you can do is nothing. Leave it alone. If the best medicine is finding somebody else who you're really interested in, and luck usually would have it, or whatever, that as soon as you stop pursuing, it gives her the space to then potentially pursue you. So if you do want her back, the only way to get her back is to leave.
You see what you just described there is really interesting. It's like, if I just let her go, I'm waiting for closure. But what if I close it? If I say, right, it's over, then I'm releasing the emotions that come with that. And they do differ, but there is a model, the grieving process. But if I get nasty and be bad towards the other, what I'm doing is trading in the grieving process for guilt more often than not, and a bit of shame, feeling a bit embarrassed, maybe a bit of small later, because like you say, it feels good at the moment.
Yeah.
But then you're left with a residue. So what I'm actually doing is trading in the grieving process for a set of feelings that I possibly know, or I don't like, but I've got more accustomed to.
Mm.
And yet the work is to just learn to close it, positively walk away, and it's creating a positive ending. And the irony is, that's why there's neurosis in this, because the irony is the best out of the two of them is the closure and walking away. It's the easiest and it's the most productive. And also, then we don't carry baggage. So we don't take that baggage into the next one.
Yeah.
We let the baggage go by going through the process, whatever that is.
That's so fascinating. You're trading one emotion for the more familiar one.
Actually, I mean, a great example in today's world is I'm scared of whatever. I'm scared of rejection. So what I'll do is I'll obsess over the fear and cause anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So what I do is I don't deal with the fear. I create anxiety. Well, I'm not addressing the fear. If I stay with the fear, then I can confront the fear or back up from it. But what I do is I create another feeling that I've got used to, anxiety with anxious types.
Yeah.
And you're not actually doing the work on the fear as being the work. So I prefer anxiety and that kind of thing.
Oh, that's interesting. I see that a lot with, I don't work with guys so much anymore on sort of like cold approaching. That's something that used to be very popular. And
I heard of that, yeah.
Yeah, it's something I did a ton of. I feel like it was sort of like the most important part of the early stage of the journey for me, because I had this desire when I'd see a beautiful girl just to go talk to her, make conversation, shoot my shot. But I had crippling approach anxiety. And what you just said was really fascinating, because it was like, yeah, there was a fear here. And then I went to this anxious place, which wouldn't allow me to act. Ultimately, I got over it by replacing the anxiety with a bigger pain, right? Either like being with a buddy who would call me a pussy or a wimp or whatever if I didn't go approach her, right? Or attending a $3,000 boot camp where, if you don't do it, you're out that money and you'll feel even more like a failure. So simply, replacing the, carrots and sticks phenomenon effectively. But ultimately, when I muscled through enough of them, the anxiety was replaced with more of a excitement feeling. Instead of being scared to get on the roller coaster, you're just a little bit like, ooh, this is going to be fun, instead of this is going to be scary. And then it became one of my favorite things to do, and kind of like oh, wow, I can just leave the house and I might end up on a date. How fantastic.
It becomes exciting, not anxious.
Exactly.
And that's an interesting point, isn't it, Robbie? What changed? What was the switch from anxiety to excitement? And you raised a really interesting point. You can work through the fear, through the excitement. But the problem is you don't gain the direct information early. It's a harder way of doing it. But the good news is it takes a lot of tenacity. And that can be very growing. That can help us grow as well. So it's not a deficit. It just tends to be a longer way round than if you sit with the fear and go and confront the fear. I'm scared of going and approaching that woman because she might reject me. Now that's black and white, isn't it?
Right.
But if I create anxiety and that gets like big, and I have to muster up all of these games to get in there, it's a harder way of doing it, I think.
For sure. And the thing that was the most effective for me getting over it was simply being honest with the words on the approach. One of my favorite lines was, hey, I had to risk embarrassing the hell out of myself to come over and meet you. And me saying that allowed me to release the fear, and her hearing that put her in a position of, okay, well, I don't want to embarrass this guy by being too rude or mean or blowing him off. So it's kind of like a weird little funny social contract that was created. And I tell my clients with worse approach anxiety, I say, just run up and say, hey, I have terrible social anxiety. I just wanted to say hi. I'm going to run away now. And I'm like, can you at least do that? Like, remove the whole, I have to get her number or I have to have this go well. If you can remove that and simply like go confront the fear, I feel like that helps people move through, which I think is similar to what you're saying.
Yeah, you've done the work. You've done the work. And I think that's possibly why you become a coach, because you've done the work. I remember when I was training, my professor saying, you can't take people to a place you haven't been.
Hmm.
And you've been there and you've done it. And that's why you're good at what you do, I would suggest.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I mean, it was finding, for me, it was, again, the congruence, the honesty. It was finding the words to match how I was feeling. And that's a big thing. I feel like guys who struggle with women and dating, they have a lot of emotions, but they find it very difficult to maybe isolate them and communicate what they're feeling or what they're thinking in a way where a woman can be compassionate and attracted versus, them just kind of being robotic and in their head. I work with a lot of more analytical types who I think get kind of stuck.
Do you notice the difference between the old way and the new way when you became congruent, started saying, this is how I feel? And do you remember, if you look back, was there a shift in the way you felt about yourself from the way that you were incongruent, let's say, to congruence?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think I had some wins and some success, so I was less attached to the outcome and more okay with her maybe not liking me. And I managed to get to a place where I preferred being honest over liked. If I could walk away saying, hey, I respect myself because I was straightforward. And I said what I felt, and I said this scary thing, that is better than getting some result by being, dishonest, I guess you could say.
And what makes that better?
Good question. I think it comes back to maybe self-respect or a sense of doing the right thing or not cheating yourself.
We go back to the beginning of this session, really. What is self-esteem? It's at the core, we're all similar, and we don't want to cheat each other or ourselves. That's raising self-esteem. It's like you've done the work, and that shift between what I used to do because I didn't know to what I do now, and what it looks like as well. You've gone away from pleasing to I'm going to survive this if I get rejected.
Wow, yeah, that's really interesting. You're good.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because that's how we work together, I think.
Right.
That's how you do your work. Self-esteem without confidence is lacking, and vice versa. But again, if we go back to the analogy of you've got a tripod that you can keep raising, but you raise your confidence and self-esteem around the same time, and the baseline goes up with that.
Yeah.
It's your meta baseline. That's how you feel about yourself confidently, and they do entwine as well. Confidently and esteemed, my self-worth is.
Right.
If you've got both of those, you can go up to someone and take the rejection. Yeah, it hurts, of course. I mean, it's going to hurt, especially if you're sensitive, but you're going to survive that.
Right. I'm so glad that the, one of my clients in particular found you, and he was referring you to a bunch of the other guys in the group, which is how you and I ultimately led to chat. And prior, I'd worked with a lot of guys who had worked with therapists before. And surprisingly, or maybe not, I'm curious what your thoughts are. A lot of them worked with female therapists. And there was a bit of a tension, I guess, when they would speak about their coaching with me. Of course, they're talking about running around and picking up women. And that as a female therapist, right, I would imagine they're a little bit caught in the midst of, well, I see how he's doing this for his development and whatnot. But then the guys would tell me, yeah, I'm lying to my female therapist about what I'm doing. I'm like, that doesn't seem productive. So I'm so glad now that, we have a resource. And for anyone obviously listening, and if you feel like your confidence is rising and maybe your self-esteem is not, you feel bad about yourself, or you don't feel like you're making progress, I feel like, somebody like you, Geoff, who understands it from the male side and also has gone through your own journey. It's such an amazing resource. So
thank you so much. That's very kind of you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, and I used to work in an industry where I made good money, and it was a great career. I did this because I've struggled in my life, and I've grown with the help of others, and I wanted to give something back. A bit like yourself, you've grown and you've changed, and And not only that, you're helping men and women by by your journey of not knowing and then knowing and choosing congruence over incongruence, let's say.
Hmm.
And if you can pass that over and help people see that there is different ways of doing this, and there is a way that you and others will grow, or you and others will not grow.
Yeah.
And I think it's just a wonderful thing that we can both do and help others to feel good about what they're doing. Basically, that if we're summarizing, you can have fun, you can go out, you can have some dopamine, you can have some fun with like-minded people. Nothing wrong with that. But if you can come away and feel good about it, I mean, how bad's that?
Exactly. And the women are left better too.
I get women therapists. I've worked with a lot of them, and they are more dominant. I don't know. I think it was about 8 out of 10 when I was training. I think 8 women to 2 guys. I can't in
Oh,
the
wow.
UK anyway. Something like that. But you've got to remember, and I get that a woman might sort of think, oh, hang on, But you've got to remember, is women have got a choice as well. Like the guys have a choice. It's a game, isn't it? It's the dating game.
Yeah.
And, again, if we can promote honesty through congruence and through learning about oneself, no harm done.
Exactly. Yeah. And the better I see clients get in their dating game, they tend to attract, the women that are looking for the same thing they are, right? If they're in this place where they want to, go out and be the guy around town, they'll meet the women that are also, looking to party and have fun and and then
the energy, isn't it? We attract the energy. Yeah.
Yeah. And then a certain place, I feel like I don't know, for me, I felt like I needed to do all the things I needed to do. And then I'd be very happy in a relationship and more of I guess a normal, you could say, or traditional lifestyle. I remember going to a therapist when I was 30, and I think it was the first time I ever had a therapy session. And I was battling this decision, this turmoil of should I commit and date this girl who on paper I thought was pretty much perfect. Same values, same religion, all the things that seemed to matter. But in the back of my head, it was like the alarm bells going off, you're not ready, you need to have fun, blah, blah, blah. And when I talked to this therapist, who was a brilliant guy in New York City, he said, listen, he asked about my childhood and whatnot. And he's like, you're an athlete. And you've now turned picking up women into your sport, and you're not ready to retire. And I'm like, you're right. That's exactly how I feel.
And it's knowing yourself again, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's like getting to a point where, that therapist has just said that, and yeah, that's right. He's held a mirror up and said, have a look at that.
Right.
And you've gone, yeah, that resonates. This has gone on when I was a young guy. I was probably about 14 or 15. I started dating. And my dad said to me, go and have fun, get it out of your system. So when you settle down, you're ready. So this is nothing new. It's just that it's everywhere now, social media and stuff. It was just the family and dad normally telling the son, or, and mum telling the daughter a different thing back then. But
right.
This is nothing new. This has been around for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and a lot of women today say they want to get it out of their system as well before they have kids.
Totally.
I think it's a very healthy attitude if that's what you choose. If you don't, that's fine as well.
Yeah. At first I was like, I want to get it out of my system, but I have no idea how. But figuring out how is the fun part, I guess, or can be the tough part. But yeah. So anyways, Geoff, I so appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom. I know your practice is pretty full at the moment, but if people are interested in working with you and whatnot, what's the best way they can learn about that?
Yeah, you could pass over my details on WhatsApp. I sometimes have a bit of a waiting list, but I usually get round to people fairly quickly. I have a bit of a revolving door thing. People come and they go and they come back, and
Mm-hmm.
some people stay for a long time. But so there's movement. So I'll always put somebody on the list, and as long as it's not an emergency, I can refer them to somebody else. Or if they can wait, I can help them, hopefully. And as we're talking about today, and
Mm-hmm.
find the congruence, find what feels good, move away from what I'm caught up in, all of those things. And by the methods I spoke to you about today, Robbie. And yeah, you know, no therapist will say there's 100% guarantee, but got a pretty good success rate in this.
Yeah. I mean, I can attest to the guys in the group who've had a tremendous amount of improvement and success. And yeah, so thanks again for...
So thank you for the opportunity. Brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation, and I think the guys listening will feel the same.
Thank you so much. Lovely to see you again, and speak soon.
Yeah. All right.
Out of all the guys I know, the only ones who managed to consistently win the game are those who built and invested in a high status social circle. You can certainly approach women and try your luck on the apps if you're a Chad, but those strategies simply don't work consistently to attract top tier women and awesome friends into your life. But for most guys, the idea of building a social circle can feel overwhelming, so they continue to hunt for women in their usual ways and end up settling for a girl they were never really that excited about in the first place. To avoid this fate, join our community and instantly plug into a highly vetted social circle of cool dudes to network and navigate your journey with. You already know it's hard to find wingmen because the good ones don't stay in the game very long. Many of our members travel together, end up living together, build amazing circles, and even businesses together, both in the West and in many of the best locations around the globe with gorgeous women and low cost of living. I'm extremely careful who I let into this community, but if you feel like you'd make a good fit, you can apply to join. The link's in the description.